I want residuals.
What's going on, Freak Nation? It is a Whip-Ass Wednesday here in the Freak Nation, and I think many of you know who is whipping some ass and who is essentially getting their ass whooped over the last 24 hours, Freak Nation. And we will be talking with a great insider that's been with us many times, Daniel C. Lust. Dan Lust, Esquire, will be joining us here in the Freak Nation, sports law attorney, who's got some crazy insight to this Brian Flores versus the NFL world lawsuit that was busted out yesterday. Yesterday or day before?
Yesterday.
That was
right, yesterday. Yeah. Sorry.
I know, they fly together.
Well, travel just screws me up, man.
You just landed back in Phoenix this morning.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Got a headache, too, man. What the hell's that about? Damn it. Richie wouldn't even know what to do when his alarm went off at 4 a.m. Richie would think there's like a freaking alien invasion. Have you ever woken up at 4 a.m., Richie?
Yeah. Of course. Back in the day.
You got to get up pretty damn early. Oh, that's right. Back then I used to do the morning show.
When I was doing doing mornings with Jody. Yeah, I'd wake up at 3:30 in the morning and just do it and not like it very much. Thank you, caffeine.
Roll over, throw on a hat, and go.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So Dan Lust coming up in a few minutes to give us the litigious insight of this Brian Flores lawsuit versus the NFL. We don't need to get into the weeds, into the necessary wording, but basically it's Brian Flores. This whole thing popped with this text from, of all people, Mr. Belichick. And if that one text from Bill Belichick did not happen, if it would have gone to the right Brian, I don't think we'd be sitting here.
We might not.
Right? All that being said, Crasher, that one text seemed to open up a volcanic-sized accusation against the National Football League, a number of its members, its teams, that this lawsuit to me seemed like it was in the making. All they needed was just that spark, which was that Bill Belichick text.
The whole text thread.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I mean, there were clearly, as seen in this lawsuit, other reasons to be upset at the NFL, such as being offered money to tank games and just other things that Brian Flores would not cooperate with. But the root of it all comes down to racism in the league. And yeah, I'm very intrigued to talk to Dan Lust about how the NFL begins to repair itself, at least make things right. Make things right. Have we really learned much since the Kaepernick taking a knee during the anthem? Has anything really changed? I mean, we thought that was going to spark change and things being better. I don't see that much has really evolved since then, which is sad.
Richie, you've had a little time to digest this. I'd like to know the millennials' take on things, because a lot of times you'll go a little further right or a little further left, what I do. But I think we're all pretty much on the same side on this one, and on the same area of the bench as we watch this thing unfold. But what's the millennials' take on this, Rich?
First of all, I love Brian Flores. I was on the record saying that I would want Brian Flores 10 times out of 10 over Cliff Kingsbury. Mm-hmm. Hands down.
That's right.
And if you go, and I want to find this article again. I believe it was from ESPN.com. I believe it may have even been on Undefeated from a couple of years ago, right around the time he was hired to be the head coach of the Miami Dolphins. And it was a deep dive into Brian Flores' history and how he wound up on Bill Belichick's staff. And he talked a little bit about this in his interview on CBS this morning, earlier today. And he was talking about, listen, I grew up not too far from these New York CBS offices in the projects in New York City. His parents are immigrants to this country. And so he grew up very poor in a bad area, and he used football as his way to get out of that bad situation that he was in. And now he's an NFL head coach. Not at the moment, but he probably will get a job again. I hope at some point soon. And he has a great story, and so hearing him do this makes me a bigger fan of him than I already was. And I'm glad he came out and did it. And we'll ask Dan in a second. He had some great tweets earlier today asking about why do this now? Why do this before you've taken a new job? And I think he kind of spoke to that a little bit, saying, listen, I know I'm freaking qualified to do this. My credentials are out there. I've proven that I'm a winning head football coach. And so he's basically daring the league now to say, listen, I know I can be a head coach in this league. I have a winning record, and if you don't hire me now, you're proving my point.
Let's do this. Let's take a break. I see Danny C. Lust. He's there. We're going to take a break, come back with our sports law insider, Dan Lust, next in Freak Nation.
She has small hands, so she can really get in your mouth.
Our older patients have a lot of spunk.
She's even gone as far as to floss them sometimes for me.
I won the Crest Elderly Service Award for excellence in dentistry. It spurs you on to pay attention to the geriatric population.
I've asked Cammy if are my teeth going to last me the rest of my life, and she said, oh, yes.
I would give her the Supreme Award for taking care of old men like me.
Have you heard about Lucas Brake Parts Cleaner? Lucas Brake Parts Cleaner is made of the highest quality components, giving you superior performance and leaving no residue. How do you apply this? You apply Lucas Brake Parts Cleaner liberally to the parts that need to be cleaned. You'll eliminate brake fluid, grease, dust, and dirt components. We know a little bit about that here in the desert, I'd say. And basically what that does is that makes you a happy driver, because now your brake noise is gone and your performance has gone up. Boom.
We've got Dan Lust coming up in just moments. Richie wanted to highlight a video that came out of ESPN this morning with Ryan Flores from, I believe this is from Get Up. Richie, is that true?
Yeah, this is from ESPN this morning. Not only did he do the interview on CBS, he went on Get Up this morning and talked about his lawsuit as well. So I want to make sure that we actually listen to Brian Flores instead of just listening to us yap about it. So here's what Brian had to say this morning on Get Up on ESPN.
You filed this lawsuit, which you are aware is obviously going to have enormous repercussions. What was the tipping point for you through your experiences that made you feel this was something you needed to do?
Well, I mean, just, I've been on, several interviews over the years. And look, I mean, we didn't have to file a lawsuit for the world to know that there's an issue from a hiring and firing practices in the National Football League.
Why? That's correct. A lot of people have pointed this out. So why did you feel you needed to do this?
Because we need change. That was the number one reason. And I know there's a sacrifice, there's risk to that, but at the end of the day, we need change. We need change. I know many very capable black coaches, some of my staff who I know, if given an opportunity or when given an opportunity, are going to go and do a great job on their interview. And I would just hate for that to be a waste. And I think, we need to change the hearts and minds of the people making those decisions. That's why we filed the lawsuit.
Who are those people? Who specifically do you think needs the change?
The owners of the NFL.
Ownership. He just lays it out there.
All right, let's bring Dan Lust in. All right, Danny Lust here in the Freak Nation. What's up there, DL?
I'm good. I'm
right.
listening to Richie. It's a loaded lawsuit. You guys know I like to come on here and joke a lot. And sometimes these stories are, kind of light and fun. This one's, kind of an eye-opener on a couple levels. And you listen to comments like that from Brian Flores, and then you kind of have to take a step back and just say, like, is this going to be the lawsuit that changes football at its core? So us lawyers, I deal with some light cases, I deal with some heavy cases. This is certainly on the heavier side, but certainly some important issues and sometimes uncomfortable conversations that we have to have.
And that's exactly where I want to go with this, because what has changed since Colin Kaepernick took a knee and that became a big issue in the NFL? It doesn't seem like much has changed. How can this be different this time around?
I mean, it's a good question. Like, right at the end of the day, Colin Kaepernick, he did institute change. We had I saw it last year. We had rows of players kneeling at the same time, which was unheard of. So the culture has certainly changed. We'll see, right? But as of right now, I mean, it's almost a statistical argument. There's one African-American head coach in the NFL. There's 6 African-American general managers in the NFL out of 64 open slots. So something's going to have to change. The Rooney Rule, I think, had, as Brian Flores said in his complaint, was well-intentioned, but it hasn't accomplished its goal. If you only have 7 individuals filling those 64 roles and you're trying to promote diversity. So, I mean, that's the change that would be enacted, a better version of some internal policies and protocols to help diversity. Again, if that's really what the NFL's stated goal here is, I mean, that's why the NFL is getting in a little trouble. They talk about diversity being so important, and the numbers don't really bear that out, that it's working. So that's why the NFL is kind of in hot water here, because you got to practice what you preach to some extent.
Well, hold on just a second, Kenny. With ownership being called out so blatantly by Brian Flores in this lawsuit, and of course in that interview and in other future interviews, it kind of, in my opinion, puts a spotlight on, oh, hey, the sale of the Broncos. Is something going to be changeable in that sale? I mean, will a minority group be able to take possession of this team and will that be the way that enacts change? Right.
Like I saw the same reports. I mean, like I hear the arguments, and again, like who am I to make the argument? But like I don't own an NFL team. I have no say in this process. But that maybe I've seen people talk about these studies that the reason that there are so many white head coaches and white general managers is because they are white owners, and right these white owners want to hire people that think or that kind of represent their ideals in some way, shape, or form. That's not okay by any means. But again, these are the same owners that are kind of promoting diversity, and they don't really have diversity under their own roof. So something's going to have to change. If it takes bringing in African-American ownership, maybe that's what it takes. But at the NFL, if they really want to put their foot down and say, you know what, enough is enough. I don't, and I guess, Crash, just to the point you made, the NFL statement yesterday was, for lack of a better term, just completely tone deaf. They said that Brian Flores' complaint in this lawsuit was meritless. Like, there is certainly some merit in there, right? I just talked about the numbers, the one head coach, 6 general managers, like certainly something there. Maybe his particular legal case might not have merit, but don't tell me that you conducted an investigation and you came to that conclusion within an hour and a half of the lawsuit being filed. I think that's just certainly disingenuous.
Dan Lust joining us here in the Freak Nation. You can follow him on Twitter at SportsLawLust. And Dan, what this can do, and what frankly it did somewhat with Kaepernick, was it's a Pandora's box where this can open up so many closed-door conversations that these guys have. Well, I don't care if it's the Washington, what are they? They're the Commanders now. The Washington Commanders or the Las Vegas Raiders, all of that BS that went down and is going down. What this can do is open up so many other areas of conversations, money under the table, how they treat others, who they hire. How does the NFL let this go to court for the public to digest?
I mean, I heard Richie talking about it earlier. Like this is, I mean, you have to bring up Kaepernick in the conversation, and Kaepernick, and the reason he's getting brought up, he's in the complaint. So the attorneys that drafted this with, I'm sure, Brian Flores knew exactly what they were doing. Brian Flores, the timing of the lawsuit's interesting. I don't really know how else to phrase it other than interesting. Colin Kaepernick waited until he was very clearly out of football, and then it was abundantly clear what was going on, right? Or at least enough clear that the court of public opinion was on Kaepernick's side. I don't know. I talking to lawyers, I was on the phone with a lawyer just before I joined you guys. Do you think that the case could be better, right, if you wait until you don't get the Texans job, until you don't get the Saints job, and then you could say, I was maybe the hottest head coaching candidate. I shouldn't have gotten fired from the Dolphins. I'm maybe the biggest name on the market other than Brian Daboll, and not a single team wanted to hire me. Maybe that's a little bit of a stronger argument. I just for the case, and I just call it like I see it. I think he's going to have Brian Flores. Again, this is a class action lawsuit that involves a number of other people. It's not a Colin Kaepernick situation where it's Kaepernick versus the NFL. This is Brian Flores and the coaches that came before him that applied for coaching positions, the general manager positions. I just find I have a hard time with Brian Flores. The whole case is based on him not getting the Giants job. And the Giants job went to the 1A, 1B, went to the other guy that everyone was talking about, was just the hottest head coaching candidate, maybe the greatest playoff performance of all time against the New England Patriots. And then that, fantastic performance against the Chiefs. So it's not like you were necessarily objectively more qualified than Brian Daboll. If anything, you guys were both very qualified. So I just, from a legal perspective, I think if I was his lawyer, I'd like him. I think I'd have a better case. If you don't get the Texans job, the Texans suck. I'm sorry if I'm saying the obvious.
No.
Like, why aren't you getting that job, right? So it's, I just think it could have been done a little differently. Not to say that the case still won't be successful. I just think there was probably another strategy you could have taken.
Does the NFL let this go to court?
So they're not going to have a choice, right? I mean, this is kind of out of their control. At a certain point, you're going to have plaintiffs that want to get paid some money, and I'm not saying anything that hasn't been reported elsewhere. There are plaintiffs in the Deshaun Watson case that would like to be paid in for the case to go away, but it can't settle. If Colin Kaepernick, who I don't really think was concerned about money, he was concerned about sending a message. I think if you're just reading what Brian Flores is saying, he's closer to the Kaepernick perspective, that he wants to send a message, right? He wants to uncover, the racial injustices that are occurring with the NFL hiring and firing practices. So, yeah, will the NFL pay to make it go away? Sure. I'm sure they would love to make it go away. Because it has the potential, like you guys mentioned, with the Commanders' emails and whatnot. Like, if there's another John Gruden, another NFL head coach that has those type of, it's not even allegedly racist emails, and that comes out, like, that's going to hurt the brand. I don't know how much it'll hurt the brand, but certainly the NFL would pay to make this go away if it was reasonable. Yeah. But I don't get the sense that Flores is concerned about money. Again, he's the same guy that's kind of, for better or for worse, torpedoing his chances to get these other head coaching gigs. So I don't think it's about money. I think it's about sending the message. Richie, I know you want to ask him one more thing. The reason I asked that was the lawsuit with the St. Louis Rams versus the National Football League. What the NFL settled for, $750 million to make that go away? That's why I say, Will, you're right. According to Flores, it's not about the money, but it's incredible what the money do with Colin Kaepernick. It can do wonders. Yeah, I mean, I guess the only pushback on the Rams case, the NFL did not want to pay a dime on that for like 3.5 years. And then the case got on the verge of trial. On the verge of trial, that was on the verge of the Super Bowl. So it was setting up to be really bad for football. And only then, first time in the entire case, did they pony up. Not to say that the NFL won't pony up, but just as a kind of a non-sports, like a legal thing, you don't want to offer too much money early on in the case before anything has happened, because that will incentivize a whole host of people to sue you for a whole host of things. Mm-hmm. And if you set a precedent that will pay these people off, we don't want to deal with any litigation. We don't want to deal with any discovery. Sometimes you have to send a very loud message. We will fight this tooth and nail on the merits. You're going to have to earn this for 3-4 years before we're willing to pay you a dime. That's, more of a big business perspective. You guys know I've worked in commercial law. Some people don't want, even if it's like, I've had a case once I was on the defense side. Somebody wanted like $500 to settle what was kind of a messy case. And I told my client, I'm like, $500, get rid of this thing. You don't have to pay me significantly more than $500 if you get this thing out the door. And they go, no, we don't want to set a precedent. This person will tell people. And I'm like, okay, I get it. So that's also, I'm sure, part of the NFL's protocol here. They're going to move to dismiss. They're going to try to get this thing kicked out of court. And they're, going to try to play, big kid at the playground here. Mm.
We're talking to Dan Lust here on The Freaks. And Dan, I tweeted this out yesterday, and this is 100% the truth. I was out and about yesterday when I got the notification on my watch about this lawsuit. So I didn't get a chance to digest it until I got home a little bit later. And the first person I went to was your Twitter feed. So thank you very much for all the information. And
that wasn't a joke, whoever hit that button.
So you can follow him too. It's at Sports Law Lust. You can follow him on Twitter. But my question is this. I saw those text messages. Everybody saw those text messages from Bill Belichick to Brian Flores. And us non-lawyers were like, smoking gun. You got him, Brian. You got him. Ha! However, legally speaking, is that the same smoking gun that us non-lawyers think it is?
Well, certain people think it is in the legal community. And I am one that does not. So, right, like the text is an interesting one, and the way the complaint's drafted, the way the complaint's drafted is just kind of the narrative of the case. So at trial, you're not going to be held to what the complaint says. The theory, you can obviously kind of mix and match, but the crux of the complaint is that, but for this mistaken text messages sent to Flores instead of Brian Daboll, they would never have known that he was just a sham interview, that they were checking a box. And I'm like, okay, like I get that. He would never have had that idea that popped in his head. But like, who's the source of the information? It's not John Mara, who owns the Giants. It's not the general manager of the Giants. It's actually someone that's affiliated with the team that has nothing to do with the Giants. Bill Belichick is not an employee. He's not an agent. In a court of law, someone who's not affiliated with the organization can't bind statements. Like if John Mara, the owner of the team, said that, yeah, you could probably attribute that to him in some way, shape, or form. That yes, the team was planning to hire Brian Daboll and ahead of time. But if I'm the Giants, which I like their statement, and again, you guys know, full disclosure, I worked for the Giants from 2008 to 2012, 10 years since I've had any affiliation with the team, but I call it like I see it. I like their statement. Their statement said, up until the 11th hour, we were considering Brian Flores. We essentially didn't do anything wrong. And I think there's a lot of credibility to that because Brian Flores and Brian Daboll were probably the two hottest coaching candidates on the market at the time. So the Giants are basically saying implicitly, Brian Flores, like, we think you're incredibly qualified. And the way the Giants are going to defend this box checking thing is by saying how qualified Brian Flores is for the position. It's kind of interesting. Like if we get to depositions, the Giants are going to be staring across the table from Flores and telling him, Brian, you were an incredible interview. You were amazing. What you did with the Dolphins was incredible. We were planning to hire you. And that's why I was kind of insinuating, like, Brian Flores is a good head coaching candidate. He worked wonders with the Dolphins that no one expected. The guys won 6-7 straight games in a row, and he shouldn't have been fired. But that's why I wish, if it was my case, I would have waited for him not to get like a job that he should have 100% gotten. Texans, Saints, right? Who was left in the coaching candidacy pool at this point? So that's why, Richie, why I wanted to point it out. I'm like, I'm not trying to say anything controversial. I just think from a legal perspective, I think the case is stronger. Maybe you don't make as much of a shock, but the case I think is stronger if you wait until you don't get those jobs, and maybe you get them, and then maybe you reconsider a lawsuit. Right? Who knows about that narrative?
Can we talk about Miami Dolphins owner and maybe several other owners? $100,000 a game to tank next week, Lust?
There are so many layers to the story.
Yes.
We just went for like 10 minutes and we didn't even talk about like what maybe is the biggest part of it. Stephen Ross,
right.
The owner of the team, is alleged to have offered a bribe to Brian Flores to lose games in 2019. So that season, I believe they started 0-7. So, and that was when everyone on social media hashtag Tank for Tua. I'm not a Dolphin fan. I knew about Tank for Tua. So that social media movement wasn't just happening on social media. It was happening in the front office of the organization, according to Brian Flores. So it's out there. There are people in my replies, which I think it's a valid point. If this is true, why is it coming out in 2022? What took so long for that to come out? Which I think is fair. If you're really looking out for the sanctity of football and the integrity of football, maybe bring that up ahead of time. So I think that's fair. Flores' legal team says they have evidence to back it up. If there are receipts and emails, they're going to come out in terms of discovery. But that's a loaded allegation. Pete Rose level, Chicago Black Sox scandal. It's in that territory.
Yep. Well, I think it's going to warrant another visit from Lust next week. Can you do it?
I mean, count me in. Tell Stan to hit me up.
All right. That's Sports Law Lust. Dan Lust here in the Freak Nation. Always fantastic. Dan, thank you, buddy.
My pleasure, guys. Anytime.
You bet. Dan Lust here in the Freak Nation. Wow. Again, this thing has legs, freaks. Have a wonderful rest of your whip-ass Wednesday here in the Freak Nation. Be sure you follow us on Twitter. Subscribe to us on YouTube. If you're watching us on Twitch, Facebook, thank you guys for being a part of this big old thing. Later.
I want residuals.